Our next speaker, Lala Mooney, is an outspoken activist against the oppression of the Cuban government. Lala and her family were put into prison in 1961, immediately following the Bay of Pigs invasion. The family was able to escape after 2 months, made their way to the United States, and eventually settled in the DC area. She now travels to Cuba on a yearly basis to visit her relatives and friends and takes clothing and medicine to the local churches there. She has appeared on BBC and Univision and has also been covered in publications like the Frederick News Post and other Hispanic publications. She has 4 children, one of whom, Alex Mooney, is the chairman of the Maryland Republican Party. She's now retired and divides her time between her 13 grandchildren and her dedication to Cuba. She earned her BS in psychology from Catholic University and a master's in psychology and community counseling from Hood College in Maryland.
Hi, it is an honor to come and speak to you as a guest of the Claire Booth Luce Policy Institute. And I've been trying to find a microphone that takes care of my accent. And,
There's an app for that.
technology hasn't advanced that much. So, but I appreciate your understanding whenever I mispronounce. I can tell in your faces, because generally when I make a mispronouncement, I see your faces smile. As you know, she said, I was in prison in Cuba. My whole family was in prison in Cuba. And what's not often said is this was when the Bay of Pigs invasion took place. And what is not often known is it failed. Everybody in America knows it fails. But the history books don't tell you that Fidel rounded 100,000 prisoners all over the country. They went in buses and they picked up people. They came to my house and everybody goes to prison. So that already gives you a flavor of what I'm going to tell you today on the system, which I'm sure you already all heard, when they pick you up and they throw you in prison for anything. What really, I want to cover today 3 issues very important to women: prostitution, abortion, and suicides. And I'm going to start prostitution with a story, a real life story. This young man, he was a student, a friend of my son, went to Cuba. And as he was walking down the Malecón, which is the seashore, where people meet, this woman approached him and said, would you like to have sex with my daughter? And she pointed out to her daughter, who was only 15, about 15. The man was horrified, the young man, because he really didn't even have that in mind. So he said, no. So then the woman insisted. And then she said, would you like to have sex with my younger daughter, who's only 11? And he pointed out to her. Well, my friend says he just could not believe it. He was horrified. He said no. And he walked away. And this is the picture that you find today in Cuba. It breaks your heart, but you have a situation, you say prostitution has always existed, but prostitution where the mother and the father and the family is into the business. It shows you how hardened the thinking is in Cuba and how they have lack of morality. To make it even worse, in public speech, Fidel Castro bragged about Cuban prostitutes. And he said, they're the best educated and the healthiest ones in the world. He bragged. And I was talking to a friend of mine that travels to Cuba constantly. And he said, that's what makes it different too. Prostitution generally is done by women who are very poor, that have no other means. But in Cuba, the prostitutes are the engineers, the architects, and the medical doctors. Why do they do it? Why do they have that need to go that way? And then it has gotten even worse. So now it's not only women, now it's prostitution with children, and homosexuality, and all kinds of avenues. And the government looks the other way, lets it happen, or even supports it. To the point that after Fidel Castro expressed his support, the group of women youth, the youth group, made a declaration that being a prostitute was being patriotic, was bringing foreign currency to your country. So this is the official stand of the youth group in Cuba. The second thing now, I try to bring it to food. Why do some of these women do this? What is the situation with food in Cuba, and how much does hunger have to do with it? Okay, I'm going to distribute now. Oh, did they already have it? Okay. I hear the previous speakers talk about statistics, and it was a great point. And miscommunication and handling. In Cuba, the problem is a little bit different. The problem is lack of knowledge. So after talking to a lot of people, Cuba has a ration card. So if they give you a ration card, your assumption is that you're going to have enough food, right? So one day, finally, I got it down and I made a drawing. Do you all have the drawing with you? This is the famous Cuban ration card. This is what is supposed to maintain you for a whole month. So as you can see, this only lasts 2 or 3 days. After that, you're back to hunger. So it's a very interesting phenomenon that people don't understand when they see Cuba, how the government controls you through hunger, through control of food. All the food, there's no small businesses there trying to sell you anything. Everything is in the hands of the government. So you have this food, but you go home, you go to work, and at work, they give you some lunch. But that's how they control you. So there's all kinds of laws about things that you cannot do. Since this is not enough, 80% of the food that you eat, you buy in the black market. So the moment you go in the black market, you're violating laws. So all the Cubans get up in the morning, how am I going to eat today, and how many laws I'm going to violate. So this brings to another interesting concept. The person that's constantly breaking the law is constantly scared of the police. So many times journalists go to Cuba, they don't see any police. People carry the police inside their heads, inside their hearts, because there's so many laws they're breaking, they're so scared. So this, when somebody, this Cuban professor explained it to me, I understood, but a lot of people, what you have to do is when you judge journalists and college professors that go to Cuba and go to the tourist places and the hotels and everything, and they don't grab the reality of what's going on. Maybe the Secret Service would like to go to Cuba. I know some very good Secret Service men, but I figure I have to put a joke in here. Finally, there's 2 more issues that go with the desperation. We talk about women, a lot of people tell you how well Cuban women are doing and how many rights they have and how many good things they have. And they totally don't see this part. And actually, when I was invited to talk about the war on women, I said, war, well, it's a little bit of a hard word, but that's what it is. In other words, the woman is the center of the family. The woman is the one that has to fight all these things. I made some research, about abortion. And I had heard, had someone stay in my house, and she, at age 22, she had 2 children and 4 abortions. And when you go to Cuba, you hear constantly. Some people say probably every single woman in Cuba has had an abortion. So I went to the statistics and the studies, and sure enough, in the whole world, there are 2 countries that are highest in abortion, Vietnam and Cuba. This is from the statistics provided in 2002. Sometimes it's not easy to get your hands on the statistics. Then I went to ask about suicides. I have met some people whose children committed suicide. And sure enough, there it is. The studies show that Cuba has the highest suicide rate for women in the world. And also, not even that, the highest rate of completion of suicide. You've heard that suicide, generally, more women attempt than men, but more men carry it through. Here, women have the highest completion of suicide. So I ask you, are the Cuban women better off? Is the system helping them? And what I really beg you, in understanding statistics, in understanding Cuba, is the lack of knowledge. And then also, the newspaper people go there, they're liberals, they see what they want to see. And that gets complicated by the fact that the Cubans don't know what they don't know. The Cubans don't have a basis for comparison. And they also cannot speak. They don't have the freedom. Because this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. There's a law in Cuba that is called the law of dangerosity. You're a lawyer, right? Dangerosity. That means if the government or anyone else, police or whatever, thinks that you might be a danger to the revolution, they can throw you in jail. They don't have to prove it. The law of dangerosity is a new lawyer's term. So thank you so much for listening. The conclusion is prostitution in Cuba is rampant. It's explosive and it's scandalous. And please feel for the Cuban women that while, yes, they have had other benefits, they're the center of the family and they are in a desperate situation. Thank you.